Get to record.
All right. Okay. So I'm really excited about Natalie today. I can't even remember who introduced us to Natalie, but
Cyrus did.
Cyrus, there you go. Cyrus, you've been a rock star on the introductions. Oh.
Yes,
Thank
he
you,
really
Cyrus.
has.
And so Natalie Fisher is a career coach and former HR background, and she's got a really fun vibe and a really great energy. And she's going to talk to us about how to make interviewing fun. And I love the topic because how many of us hate job interviewing, right? It's like you go in and you almost dread it. I don't know hardly anybody that says, "Oh, I'm so excited for this job interview." It's mostly filled with angst and apprehension and what if I say the wrong thing and all of that. Well, so at the risk of loving interviewing, let's turn it over to Natalie. And Natalie, thank you so much for agreeing to be with us this morning and to share your wit and your wisdom. And we're looking forward to it. And for everyone else, make sure you put your information in the chat so that you can connect with all of, with you, that you can connect with each other and develop those relationships that are so helpful. Natalie, it's over to you.
Oh my goodness, I am so excited. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, we got some fun to have this morning. So what I was thinking we would do is we would have since the meeting is set up the way it is, we would just do it interactively. We use the chat if you want to jump in and say something, like maybe the chat might be better if everyone wants to jump in at once, but I figured I'll ask some questions. I want you guys to be interactive and let me know what you think. But I do have a presentation for you this morning. I was going to use slides, but I'm wondering if slides are the best idea because I like seeing everyone's faces. So I figure we should just go with that because you guys seem to have a good thing going here. So how to love job interviewing. So my first question for you is, Christy already kind of asked who loves it already. Do any of you already love it? Put in the chat yes if you already love it. If you do already love it, you probably have some good thoughts about it, and some people and people could probably learn a thing or two about it from you because you probably show up a bit differently. So if you don't love it, put in the chat that you don't love it. Let's just get a sense of how many people here were. I don't enjoy interviewing because I do enjoy it because you like getting to know the new people. So that's a thought you have about it. Don't love it. Don't love it. Okay. Lots of people don't love it. So if you do love it, I'm going to ask you for some input later on because you're going to have some good thoughts to share about it. So you'll see on the board here behind me, it's not super clear. If you want, you can pin me just to see the words, but I'm going to explain it anyway. So the reason, I'm going to dive into the reason why you don't love it or you do love it, because there's a reason why. So this is called the model. It's got 5 categories here, and each category you're going to be able to fit whatever problem you're having in your whole life or your career into one of these categories. I've yet to find an exception. So I'm going to go through them and then we're going to break it down. So the circumstance is the thing that it can't be changed. It is a fact of life. It can be proven in a court of law. Everybody in the world agrees with it. That's what we're calling the circumstance. And for the purpose of this presentation, the circumstance is going to be the interview. So you have an interview, it's scheduled. Job interviewing in general, it's a thing that exists in the world. We do it. It's necessary. Whatever you want to say, that's the circumstance. And then we have thoughts about interviewing, and everybody has different thoughts about them. So the thoughts are going to create the feelings that you then have, and then it's going to create how you show up, how you talk, your vibe, what you say, how you respond to the questions, and that is going to dictate your result or your outcome. So this is just the example that we're using. So for the circumstance, it's interviewing. And so if you said you don't love interviewing, please contribute to the chat as to what are some of the thoughts you have about it. So thinking about it, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, like, some examples of what some of my clients say sometimes are, I don't know if they're going to like me. I don't know if they're going to ask me something I don't know. I don't know if I have the enough experience. So please share in the chat and I'll see what you have to say about what thoughts you have about it if you do not enjoy it. Yeah, so far I'm seeing lots of people with good thoughts about it, which we will get to. I like getting to know new people. No, these are all good. I like it when I have a job and want a new opportunity. Okay, let's look at some of the ones. Stress about not having the answer. Yeah, good one. I get in my head about if I'm qualified or not. I judge others, or I know they're judging my answers, not prepared enough, not fully qualified and stretching for new role. Here we go, another disappointment. That's a very common one, Tangela. Underperformer. I question if I've prepared enough, thinking on my feet. So the thing that these thoughts have in common, thank you for sharing, answering difficult questions. Thank you, everybody who's sharing. It's really helpful. So the things that all these have in common is when you think that thought, like it's mostly coming from a doubtful place. Like, did I prepare enough? Am I enough? Do I have enough? What if I don't know what to say? It's all coming from a space of doubt in your mind, right? And we'll notice that the people who said they did love it, they're coming from a different space. They have different thoughts that go in their thought line. So when you think the thoughts of doubt, so let's take the one like, oh, here we go, it's going to be another disappointment, or I'm not sure if I'm qualified, this could be a stretch, I'm not sure if I'm prepared enough. It's always coming from like not enough or predicting the outcome being negative and setting yourself up for disappointment. And so when we think that thought, so take the thought that you had and then ask, how does it, like, what's the feeling that comes up from there? So if you want to guess, sometimes people have trouble because they don't really talk about their feelings very much, or like we don't vocalize them a lot, but try to guess, how does it feel? Like if you're thinking, oh, here's another disappointment coming, what's the feeling that comes over you? So some suggestions could be like, yeah, anxiety for sure. Anger, like angry before you already go in, feeling anxiety, like nervousness. That's where like nerves come from a lot, like pressure, depression for sure. Yeah. So the feeling is created by that thought of, oh, I could be disappointed again. I'm not enough. I don't have enough. Maybe it's not good enough. Are we seeing the pattern here? Is this making sense to everyone? Put a 1 in the chat if you're following along here. Awesome. Okay. And then, so if you're feeling like this, so if you have these feelings going in of depression, anxiety, stress, pressure is a big one, uncertainty, the opposite of confident. I don't know if unconfident is a word, but that like the opposite of the good feelings, then your actions and behaviors are going to show up in that way. Right. And we try to cover them. Like I've coached clients and they say, oh, no, but I don't let them see that. But it's like, if you're not showing up really how you are, then you're being like, you're trying to put on a front, and that doesn't really work normally. So your actions and your behavior, however you're experiencing them with your thought and feeling. And the thing is, most people don't know because they haven't actually like pinpointed the sentence. So these sentences that you gave me, they're just sentences that your brain has grabbed onto. It has evidence that they're true, but they're not circumstances, right? They're not like, here goes another disappointment. We don't know if it's another disappointment, but your brain has decided that's what I'm going to think. And so I'm going to feel not so great about that. Nobody would feel great about that thinking that, right? And I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong. This is just how the brain works, how it works. We just don't know what we're thinking until we become aware. So I found this very helpful to kind of break down why I might be getting the results that I'm getting in a certain situation. So what might you do if you're feeling, say you're feeling, I want to do like a full example. So, does anybody mind if I use them as an example? Bill, Tangela, or like if you're really in the situation, nerves for sure. Who's good if I use you as an example? Just scrolling down. Renee. Okay, cool. So Renee, what was your thought? Or Tangela says we can use her too. What were your thoughts, Renee and Tangela?
This is Renee. My thoughts were that, definitely anxious. Definitely my thought was, I didn't perform well. Obviously I wasn't the best. Obviously I'm not.
Is this the thought after the interview or before?
It's actually before. It's both. I
Okay.
mean, I think they're a little bit different. So before,
Okay.
it's definitely the thought of, will I be able to get them to understand my skills and what I bring to the table and how
Okay.
I am the best person compared to others. So it's a lot of comparing as well, cheating,
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to
and
pick
judgment of myself.
one sentence, what do you think is the strongest one? If you were to pick one sentence out of those, is like doubt, like I might not be able to show them my skills.
Am I good enough? Am I good enough? That's
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Perfect. So that goes in the thought line. Am I good enough? So just imagine I put this here. Or it's actually not supposed to be a question technically, so I'm going to put I'm not good enough as a statement.
That works. That works.
Okay. Forgive me if you can't fully see it. I'm just doing it for a reference point, but you can pin me and you can see it a little better. But so it's thought, I'm not good enough. Feeling, what's the feeling that comes up from there?
It's definitely anxiousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anxious, of course. And then when you're feeling anxious, when you show up to the interview, how do you talk? Like when you answer the questions, like can you describe a bit how you perform in the interview?
It depends on the question. If I feel that strong about the question and it's something I'm passionate about and I feel like I have a strong answer, then I'll be, passionate and more relaxed and such. But if it's something that I don't feel as strong about it or judge myself about, I'll be more formal, probably more serious and more formal and just straightforward.
And when you're feeling anxious, like when you're in this model, because we go back and forth from a bunch of different models. So you might get a
Mm-hmm.
question in the interview and be like, oh, I know how to answer that. And then for a minute, you might feel good, right? But if your overlying feelings are, I feel anxious because I'm like the default belief is, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if I'm good enough. I'm doubting myself. How do you think one might show up? Even if you're just speculating as to how someone else might show up if they're thinking and feeling that way.
I'm probably going to show up as nervous. I'm probably going to show up as not as confident.
Yeah. And how do you think that might show up in the way that you talk to the interviewers?
So for me, it would be trying to hide it. And so I might be a little bit too,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not as soft or as personable as I'd want to be. I might be, again, going back to the more formal, you
Yeah.
know,
Okay. Yeah. So,
and more robotic, for a lack of a better way of saying it.
yeah, exactly. So you're going to be more robotic, try to be formal, try to present yourself in a certain way. Try to
Mm-hmm.
be, would you say it's accurate to say you're trying to be what they want you to be? Trying to be what they
Absolutely.
want. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you're
Absolutely.
trying to fit yourself into a box. You're not being personable like you, right? Like me and you talking or you talking to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing that. And then your result is that you don't give yourself a chance to be good enough for that role because they never got to actually meet
Mm-hmm.
you, right? Like
Yes.
they never actually got to experience who you would be if they were working with you, if you were just hanging out with them having a coffee. Like they never met that person. They met the robotic, I'm trying to put on a
We would
good
probably
face, I'm
just
trying to
gotten
do it.
glimpses of it and might
Yeah.
be, they would have
Yeah.
gotten glimpses of it, but they probably wouldn't have, they might have been confused because they would
Hmm.
have seen two different parts. So they would have been like, I'm not sure who she is because
Yeah,
I'm seeing this
exactly.
side and I'm seeing that side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really smart of you to notice, right? That you're like, okay, I can see how maybe in some situations, but, and so across the board, they leave the interaction without the full picture of who they would actually be
I could see that.
experiencing. Yeah. Okay.
I could definitely see that.
So, and this kind of the action and behavior is very nuanced, right? It's not like sometimes it's not
Mm-hmm.
something we can pinpoint, but it's just the way that you show up is stemming from the thought and the feeling, and it's happening. So it could be just the way that you said something, or a hesitation you had, or like it could be something nuanced in the interaction, just the energy, the vibe that you give off. You might not be able to pinpoint it. They might not be able to pinpoint it exactly. So they just might say, well, you just weren't a good fit. We don't really have a reason why. We're just saying that you're not a good fit, right? And that's most of the feedback that we get is not very specific, because it's hard for people to put their finger on it. They could just be like, I just didn't like her as much as I liked someone else. Like, say someone else was showing up and they're all like totally themselves, don't care what anyone thinks, and it's just you being yourself is the thing you need to be doing. But when you're caught up in I might not be good enough, and you're feeling those feelings of anxiousness, you don't allow that to happen for yourself. So it's nothing, like, it's just how it works, right? So when you get to have the awareness of it, then you get to choose something different. Because do you see any advantage here? And I'm asking you this question. Do you see an advantage of the thought, I'm not good enough? Do you see an upside to that?
The only upside that I could even think of, and as a stretch, would be that, I stay humble. I'm, in the interview, I'm not, overly boastful, but that's a stretch. That's a really big stretch. So other than that, I probably wouldn't.
And then you want to ask, is that thought working for the results you want?
Exactly.
So, and I agree with you in that it's self-protection, right? Like all the thoughts that we might put in here that are negative, like it's a form of trying to protect yourself from feeling something negative. But it's counterintuitive, because we're human. We all feel negative emotions sometimes anyway. We might as well feel it when we've really put our best forward, instead of, because it's just not fair. They don't get to see the real you. They don't get to actually interact. Like, it's just, So thank you so much for volunteering. That was really, really helpful for everybody, I think. Yeah. So we can, and actually, we can keep going with this because we're not quite done. So not good enough. That's a choice. It's a thought, like it's a sentence, and we choose sentences. We don't really know we're choosing them, but we just have them. And then we're like, okay, that's just true. Like, it's a fact. I'm not good enough. And your brain just starts thinking this day to day, right? And then it operates from that place. So if you were to put in a new sentence here, what would you like to put in there? Like, or we could ask, how would you like to feel instead of anxious?
For myself, I would like to feel strong. I would want to feel that I'm good at, obviously the opposite, just take out the word not and say I'm good enough.
Yeah. And so if you believed that, what would you feel?
Confident. I'd probably be more relaxed. I definitely would be relaxed.
Yeah. So if you thought I'm good enough, and because also something worth noticing is when you start thinking these things like I'm not good enough, what if it doesn't work out, like all the things that everybody listed, it brings in more negative thoughts. Like one negative one will have another one, and it's like thought friends come and they all join, and they're not good company at all. So it's like you want to invite a good friend in, and then they can bring in more friends that are good friends. So if you change it, if you decide, okay, and it takes a little bit of deciding consciously to change it, be like, okay, I'm going to decide I'm good enough. Like, why can I believe that? So you can list some reasons, I'm sure, because like you can find evidence for why you're not good enough, and you can find a ton more evidence for why you are.
Sure.
Right. Just the different focus that you've been having. So, so if you say, okay, I'm deciding I'm good enough today, why am I deciding that? What can you say to get your brain on board with that? What are some things that come to mind?
Oh gosh. What would I say?
Yeah, like why are you in the interview at all? Why would they interview you at all?
Yeah, they already think I'm strong because they've already picked me out of the bunch.
Exactly. And why did they do that?
Yeah.
Why did they do that?
Yeah. Because they've already seen something. They've already seen something that they liked.
But what do you think they saw?
Oh gosh, that's a good question too. What did they see?
Like why? Like why did they already pick you?
Why did they already pick me out of it? Obviously I think it's, experience. I had an interview this morning, not even a few minutes ago. And he had told me that he saw the flexibility, the versatility of my experience.
Nice. Yeah. So you have
is why
different
he pushed me
experience.
out. Yeah.
So he probably thought, oh, she could probably jump in and figure out a bunch of stuff. Like she's already figured out these things. Like she looks like she could learn really fast. Like this is like probably what they're thinking when they're interviewing you. They're not probably thinking, I don't know if she's good enough, but let's see. Right? So you want to, because if you're making up what they're thinking anyway, we might as well make up something more likely because they are choosing to interview you for a good reason. So okay, so you get yourself on board with like, okay, maybe it's possible I am good enough. Like I am coming in for the interview for a reason, and people are telling me that there are strengths that they see that not everyone has, and that's cool. What's the feeling then?
The feeling is like they need me. Like the feeling is I can help them. My feeling is more supportive. My feeling, I think
so
that's
those are thoughts,
more
and those are positive thoughts. So when you think they need me, I can help them, what is the feeling there? Like besides, because it like, so it's not anxious anymore. Is it like confident, empowered?
It's relaxed. It's a happy feeling. It's it's definitely confidence. I'm trying to think of another feeling word.
Yeah, you could just guess. Like relaxed is good one. Yeah. And you got to find what works for you, right? Like relaxed, confident, supported, seen, like it could be anything you want. So when you're feeling that way, how do you think you might show up differently in the interview?
I'm definitely going to show up as, show my strengths. I'm going to show up as relaxed. I'm going to feel myself. Authentic, I think, would also be a word that I would use.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. So you'd show up not robotic anymore. Like these things you wouldn't be trying to hide yourself. You wouldn't be trying to be overly formal. You wouldn't be robotic. You wouldn't be kind of, so you'd be more comfortable to be like, they need me. Or like, I feel supported here. I like I don't remember what the other one you said was, but they're when you're seeing that and you're feeling relaxed, calm, confident, you totally change your persona and the way that you show up. And then the result is you give yourself the highest possible chance to, if you are the right fit for that role, that they are going to see that and offer it to you. You then give yourself that opportunity, because what most people are doing when they have negative thoughts that make them feel anxious, depressed, or worried about interviews is they are doing exactly what you're doing and not allowing the interviewers to even meet the real person. Because it's like, and I've coached hundreds of people, and it's like when I talk to them, like you and I are having a conversation here, I'm just like, this person is delightful and they're so smart and they know all the things they need to know. And I don't understand why people aren't hiring them. It's because when they show up to the interview, they show up totally different. They're like, I'm flexible, adaptable, and I work hard. And it's like, yeah, everyone can say that. It's like they learn to say the same thing. And I'm not saying that you're not saying that. I'm not saying formal. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just
no, I get it. I'm teasing you.
Yeah. So this is just the awareness that you need to have. So then what you would do to take this a step further is to be conscious of it and be like, whenever your brain starts thinking, I'm not good enough, I don't know, like whenever those doubtful thoughts keep coming in, because it's just a sentence, then you can say, okay, I know that like might be true in an alternate universe, but in this particular situation, they are interviewing me for a reason. I am here for a reason. They do need my help. They do see that I have something to offer, because those things are just as true, if not more true, right? Yeah. So we're not telling, like, I understand where everyone's brain comes from and why they do it. Like, it's nothing wrong. It's just because we're trying to protect ourselves, but it's like the result is what we want to look at. And if you're not getting the result you want, there's something going on here in these spaces that aren't working. So, yeah. So what did you take away from that? How are you feeling like you'll take that into your future life to make a different, to progress differently, move forward differently?
Yeah, no, I mean, I did get past the first level this morning, so that's good news. And so I'm going to have a chance next week to practice this with a couple people. So I'm looking forward to actually putting this in play and thinking about it and actually being more relaxed in the interview. So I think it's perfect timing for me. So thank you.
Great. And also, like, that's a huge win. You got past the first level. Oh, they must have, like, confirmed. They must have confirmed that I was good for this job. They like me. It's working. So you just want to give your brain all that good stuff,
Yeah.
right? And then, yeah. So fantastic. Thank you so much for volunteering. That was amazing.
Thank you.
So,
Natalie?
yeah.
Sorry, and I turned my camera off because I'm getting a bad connection. So the one thing I know you've been talking, but there's been a different string going through on the chat, and I think one thing that you may want to touch on, because I think this is important for the group, is I think companies are now starting to go to in-person versus Zoom. We're starting to transition back to the in-person interviews versus virtual,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's important. I think that's where you can actually really shine, is in person, because you're not limited to a certain amount of time constraint, I believe, that you are with a virtual interview. And I think that's where really you can kind of showcase the reasons why that you were talking about. Right? Why am I here? Why did I get selected for this, first, second, third round of interviews? And I'm starting to see more in-person interviews on my end, which I love, because that allows me to kind of control the conversation as best I can.
Yeah, great points.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't my idea, because I think there's others have brought up the same points.
Yeah. No. Thanks for bringing them to my attention. And here's the thing: is it's a circumstance whether it's in person or on Zoom. And I've coached a bunch of people on this too. And some people are going to have great thoughts about in person. They're going to be like, I'm better in person. I really shine. It's going to work better. I can control, like, your thoughts about in person are better, right? And some people are like, oh, I don't want to go back to in person. I like Zoom better. I feel more comfortable. I can look at my notes on my screen. They panic because of it. So really, there is no better or worse. It's just, what is your thought about it? Because I ask half the people are going to tell me that they prefer Zoom. Half the people are going to tell me they prefer in person. And the beauty of this is you get to pick.
Yes. I think the one thing that I'll just mention on that, I prefer in person, but like you said, not everyone does. However, I think my only point for bringing it up is, as we kind of get into the post-COVID environment, I think we're going to start going back to in person for some of maybe the more
I agree.
Strategic roles, roles that are out there versus middle management. I think you're going to start seeing more in person.
And it would be helpful for people to take on good thoughts about in person.
Correct. Prepare for in person, because I think we've kind of gotten out of in person, is my only point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Natalie, this is Dan, and
hi, Dan.
I believe it depends on who you are and what your past experience has been, because if you're in a sales or business development role and that's what you're interviewing for, rather on Zoom or in person, it shouldn't matter, because you have to like people, and you've got to be excited about new things. I mean, I had a college professor tell me one day, he said, Dan, you've got the right personality for sales. And I kind of looked at him like he was crazy, and he goes, no, you're going to love it, because every company you talk to, you're going to get to learn their business, which is different than the previous company you worked with. And it's always going to be new and exciting, and you're always going to be learning. And I think people have to your point about thoughts, you really need positivity in your mindset, because whether it's in person or it's over Zoom, you've just got to be your best self.
Yeah, great points. And I think I would change what you said a little. I mean, positivity is like, that works for a lot of people. I like to look at it as effectiveness, right? It simply is your thought getting you the result. You can run it through this, right? So like you said, somebody said, you have the right mindset for sales, or you have a mind for sales, right? That probably confused you at first, but then maybe you started to say, maybe I do. And then you started to feel confident about sales, and you started to see all the things that were true about that statement. And then I'm guessing you made it work for yourself.
Well, it took me 12 years. I was a pre-sales technical guy. selling software. So I was doing the demos and presentations to the technical teams. And then my oldest daughter had to go to college and I needed to make more money. And it just so happened that the guy I was working with quit. So I asked the VP of sales for his job. It's a long story, but
okay. Well, thank you for sharing with us so far.
Right.
What I'd like to do next is I'd like to generate some effective thoughts about interviewing so that we can do what we came for and generate like a fun environment around interviewing. So if you had those negative thoughts in the beginning, that you mentioned, like if you're in that space where you were feeling depressed or feeling anxious, feeling anxiety, feeling anything negative toward interviewing that you do not want to be feeling, then notice that and notice the awareness that we went through here, and notice that it's a thought that's causing that for you, and that it's a sentence here that you can choose to change. So what I'd like to do now is, some of you said at the beginning that you had some really positive thoughts about interviewing, and I would like to go through those, and maybe we can build a bank of those and I can send them out to you afterwards, because just one thought changes the way you feel, changes the way that you can show up. And I've seen it so many times where somebody can just have one shift and it can be huge for them as far as moving forward in their life. So I'm going to bring up some of the ones that I have, but I'd love for you guys to start putting in the chat, what are some of the ones? So some of the ones that I saw at the beginning were, I love meeting new people. I like getting curious about the company. Like if we imagine there's a million things that you can think of about interviewing, and you probably don't want to be choosing, I'm not good enough. It's probably it's probably not going to generate the best results here for you. So please start putting in the chat, what do you think are some of the ones? And then ask what's the corresponding feeling that goes with it. So if you could do that, like when you think it, what's the corresponding feeling that goes with it? I love what I do and I can do it in this new role. Bill, awesome. What feeling comes up from that? I love understanding new roles and seeing where my skills fit. Awesome. So you're looking at it like a puzzle. Like, okay, I'm curious. I wonder how I can make this work, how I can help them, how I can contribute my skills, how I'm the best fit. I love that, Alan. What's the feeling that comes with that? This could be the right opportunity, and I've made the first step in meeting people today. Yeah. And it's never a waste of time. It's always a networking opportunity. So who knows? Maybe it happens next time. Maybe a year down the road, you get an offer from that company. That's happened to some of my clients. Confidence, Bill. Thank you. And so you want to create thoughts that are going to create confidence for you. So investigating if I would love to work with them. Yeah. So totally flipping the narrative is like, a lot of people go into it and they're like, I don't know if they want to hire me. I don't know if they're going to like me. Instead, being like, well, I don't know if I'm going to want to work for them. So looking at it that way, and then put the corresponding feeling in there too. Yes, this is going to be great learning experience, feeling excited. Yeah, this is going to be great learning experience no matter what. And then the feeling is excited, and then the action is going to stem from there. It's all going to stem from there. I can take them to new heights. Yeah, that's exciting thought. I like to ask the question in the interview, like, what would blow your mind for the new hire to be able to accomplish? And I've had actually clients say, I think I got the job because I asked that question. Yeah. So if we want to generate the feeling of confidence, we want to ask ourselves, what do we want to think in order to generate that feeling? So those are some really, really good ones. And some other ones that I have with my clients are, this is just a conversation, right? Like we can just take the pressure off right away, right? Like this is just a conversation. It's just a meeting. We're just going to see what each other has to bring to the table, what's going to work for both of us. And it takes the pressure off for some people. And what we have to do is we have to ask, what is it that feels good for you here, right? Because what somebody might feel good with one thought and somebody else might not. So you have to ask yourself very clearly, what is it for me? So for me, the reason why I started this whole thing and why I loved it so much, these were my thoughts. It was like, it's like a whole hour where they're just asking me about me. I get to talk about myself. It didn't end up totally being like that because I was asking them about stuff too, but that's how it started. I was excited about that. And then it was like, oh, I get to learn about this company. I get to meet new people. I wonder what problems they want to solve. It was definitely coming from a curious space, and the attention was not on me. So that's a big thing. Like you'll notice at the beginning when everybody put in their thoughts that were not feeling good thoughts, it was all focused on yourself. Like about me. I'm not good enough. I might not have the experience that I need. They are going to be judging my answers. It was all very focused on you. And when you switch that focus to them, then you're able to really have much more of an enlightened conversation with them, because now you're like, okay, what do you need? How can I help? This is what I can do. This is what I did before. Okay. I even had a client just recently. She got for an HR position, and she put together a presentation of how she could help them. She mapped out a whole thing for them, and they got so excited. They like skipped their security protocol. The manager's like, okay, just send it to me on Gmail, because they had this complicated thing. And she got the manager so excited on the phone interview that he's like, just send it to me on Gmail. And they moved her ahead immediately to that process, because she was completely focused on the company, not on her own inadequacies. And we're human. We're all going to have some inadequacies sometimes, and that's all fine. We can still do the job. We can figure it out. We can still do it. It's just the focus. I'm curious about the company, looking to see if I want to hang out with them. Yeah. Like, is this a fit? Do I want to be here? Do I like these people? Looking for your own red flags. You got to take your authority back, because we look at it as like the person is in charge. They're like, oh, they're the person that's going to decide our fate, versus, I don't even know if I want it yet. So here's some other really good thoughts. I'm qualified for the position, and they will benefit from my skill set and experience. Absolutely. Especially if you're already in the interview. Love to take on new challenges. Yeah, love new challenges. I can transfer my expertise to their new segment. Yeah, these are all very empowering thoughts. Like, you can feel the power behind them. Thanks for contributing. Yeah, I can take them to new heights. Yeah, I read that one already. So if only they're lucky enough to get me. Yeah, absolutely. So are you seeing the power of the sentences that you're choosing? Put a 1 in the chat if we're understanding the power of the sentences. Awesome. Okay. Well, do you feel like you've gained a knowledge of how you have control over whether or not you love interviewing and you feel good in it and confident and relaxed, versus feeling anxious and stressed and depressed? Do you see the difference in the mindset of each person? Put a yes if you do see that. Awesome. Okay. Well, then my mission has been accomplished. Okay. Amazing. So I don't know how much time we have left, but I am happy to take questions if you have a specific question.
We have just a bit over 15 minutes. So
okay. Yeah. We can do another, I can coach someone else live.
Yeah, let's do Laura. We had you had suggested that we
yes,
identify somebody, and we did. Laura Bailey.
Awesome. Laura.
Hi.
Laura, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, Laura, tell me what's going on. What's your question? What you would like to get solved in these next 15 minutes?
Okay, so my background is human resources.
Okay.
So I've been a director of human resources and finance for a while. One of the things is, well, there's a couple of things. Being confident, sometimes I struggle with my salary, talking about salary expectations. So what would be your recommendation on helping me to just be confident to say, this is my value, this is my worth? This is the category, the salary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. So why are you hesitant to talk about it right now? And do you have a specific example? Like, if they ask you, what are your requirements? Is that when you kind of freeze up, or how does it go for you?
Yes. For example, I did have a phone interview a couple of days ago, and, they were pleased with my qualifications and et cetera. And then when it came down to the salary, I just all of a sudden froze. Like, I don't know why I did that, but
yeah. It was a thought you had, or you're running. It's a model that you're running here that you're not sure. So we're going to get to the bottom of it. So what did they ask you specifically? They said, what are your expectations, or what are your requirements?
Yeah, just, what are you looking for?
Okay. What are you looking
and
for?
And then obviously I said 6 figures, and the lady was like, well, but of course, like.
Well, that's a good response to get.
Right. So, I mean, it just sometimes I struggle with that. And I think, it's just a mindset that I have to
it is. Yeah.
Practicing just to say.
So why is because normally what I find, it's you're disconnected from the value that you're giving. You have some sort of doubt about whether or not you're going to be able to contribute that value, whether you're worth that value, whether you're giving that value. Because if you fully believed, oh yeah, I'm going to make them so much more money than this anyway, so this is my ask, right? So
Right.
what's your thought, like, with that in mind, what do you think comes up for you when you say, like, you can say your number, like, how much do you want to make? We're all friends here. What do you want to actually make? I believe we should be talking about money, okay? Because we have to set the example for other people. You're going to make a lot of money, and then other people are going to be like, oh, well, if Laura can do it.
Well, okay. So I do, for example, like when I've asked before, depending upon the role, I would say my minimum is 125.
Okay, so 125, and then that's your minimum. And then what would be, like, I always say, like, make 3 decisions. Your minimum, what you're not going to go below, what you're like, okay, yeah, I'll take that, or no question, I don't need to negotiate, done. What would be those other 2 numbers for you? And it could depend on the role, but if we don't have a role in mind right now, just make these decisions for yourself now.
Okay, so let's say, like, I haven't given any thought.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
I don't know, like a middle would be like 135.
Okay, great.
And then you want a higher number?
Yeah. So, like, if they gave it to you, you're like, ah, that's it. I don't need to negotiate. Done.
Maybe 150, for example.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to say that too. Okay, so then you need to ask yourself, when you can get clear on the fact that you're going to add the value, like in a year's time in your role, you're going to add more value than what you're asking to be paid.
Right.
Just how it works, right? So let's say, what do you do? What's your, or you said you're in human resources and finance?
Right. So I've been a director of human resources and finance. That was my last role. And then I got laid off, because of COVID and economy and stuff like that. But my degrees and expertise is in human resources.
Okay, fantastic. So in human resources, you have a huge opportunity to add a ton of value because you have a lot of influence over processes and systems and like things that would stop people from leaving, would take care of people's, like, I'm not sure if I'm putting words in your mouth, but you tell me, but like, this is kind of what my experience in human resources is. You can reduce turnover, you can put processes in place, you can save hours and hours of time of tedious things because you put more efficient things in place, right? And if we add all that up, it's going to add up to more than $150K a year for the company, right? And then it's going to have a compound effect because every year that they use all the things you put in place, they save that time again, right? And often I'll be like, we could do a quick equation on like, okay, well, say how many people had to go through the process, how much time was saved for each person, what are those people's salaries? Like it adds up very, very quickly. Do you see where I'm going with it?
Yes.
And I'm sure that with your experience, you have a lot of stories that you could tell where you've put these things in place. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. So with that in mind, if you're showing up and you're like, I know for a fact at least $200,000 was saved because I was here, because I put these things in place, because I orchestrated this time being saved, these efficiencies. If you know for a fact, and you can get on board with that, can you? Then is asking for 150 any easier, or asking for 125 any easier for you? Do you feel differently about it?
Yeah. I feel that I can go more, just reevaluate and see how my skill set can be an asset to the organization.
Exactly.
And to help minimize, risk, liabilities, because turnover is very expensive.
Exactly. And these are conversations you get to have in the interview too, because you're kind of priming them for like, okay, so I would reduce the risk here and I would reduce the turnover here and I would do this, this, and this, like in order to make sure this was, and this is probably stuff they're not thinking about. They haven't had in mind because they need to hire you to do it.
Right.
So that's where you come in. And then when you're in the interview, you have a great conversation about that. And you're like, yeah, this is what I do. This is how I do it. This is my plan for you. And they say, okay, great. We need you. Then you're like, okay, well, 150 is my rate. I mean, you want to feel confident about it, but the point is, like, when you said, okay, how do I approach it? Why am I feeling nervous about it? Is because you hadn't been focusing. My hunch is because you hadn't been focusing on the value that you were actually giving to them. Because if you saw that, you wouldn't have that response of like, oh, what if it's too much? What if they don't want to pay me that much? It's like, well, no, obviously they want to pay you that much because they can see what you're going to give them in return.
No.
So does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so the circumstance is they ask you about your salary. What was your thought before? Was like, I don't know what to say.
Right. Now I have a better understanding,
Yeah.
to put it in perspective and just reframe my thoughts.
Yes, exactly. So what thoughts do you want to have now? Because I like to do the before and then the after model if we have time. So thought, I don't know what to say. Feeling, it would be stressed or frozen, or what would you say you felt before?
Before maybe frozen, like,
yeah, just like, I don't know, unexpected, caught off guard, right? And then your action was just to blurt out 6 figures. And then your result was you wouldn't get as high as you could because you weren't prepared for that. So if we now go with what we know about your value now, what thoughts do you want to have about your value now?
Well, about my value now, I feel confident saying this is the number.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So
let's go through it. So just real quick, circumstance, they ask you about your salary expectations. What's your immediate thought now?
150.
Okay. And the feeling that comes over you when you think 150?
Happiness.
Happiness. Okay, yeah. Like happiness, maybe a little sense of pride. Not quite there yet.
Not pride, but just more at ease, more like I'm comfortable saying that, because now in my mind, if they want to delve deeper into that, then they'll say, but why? Why should we give you that? And then I can go ahead and in my brain start prioritizing and saying, this is how I can have added value to the organization. And, in conjunction with, I know there's a job description, but this is the value. Like, this is what I can offer you.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And the more that you kind of hone in on that for yourself, and the more that you remind your brain of all the things you've done in the past, of all the value you've added in the past, like it's hundreds of thousands worth of value that you've added previously for other organizations, I'm sure of it. Like, how much experience would you say you have?
Oh, for me, for HR?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been doing this about 20 years.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So like hundreds of thousands worth of value, maybe millions, depending on the size of the company, right? And it's like that all lives in your brain and they get it all for the small little piece of 150K.
Right.
Yeah. If we put that into perspective, right? So that it all comes from that. So the reason you were freezing was because you weren't really seeing that or focusing on that over and over. So, yeah.
No, yes, you're correct. You're correct.
Amazing. Yeah. Any other question?
For example, on LinkedIn, I think for me, one of the negative, I won't say negative, but an area in which that I can strengthen is like branding, like on LinkedIn, like, cause I see so many articles and then I chime in on them and, try to add value to the stories and my opinions like that. What is your perception of that? Like, how can that help me? Like, is it wise for me?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually a really, I think we need to wrap up, Christy was saying, but I am happy to continue to help you with that offline after the meeting, because I have lots of thoughts about it. And, yeah, I'm happy to share with the group what I share as well. So, yeah, thank you so much for all your questions and for being vulnerable.
Thank you, Natalie. There's one question that, that Scott has, and that's, how do you feel about responding to the salary, the question of salary with, what is the compensation for the position?
Yeah, so great question. I will just go through a quick spiel of how I talk about the salary, because I mean, this was for Laura to just get connected to her value, so it was a specific situation that she was having. But normally, I would say, if they ask you for your salary and you haven't moved very far along in the process yet, you can say something like, I'm negotiable, but you don't want to actually commit to anything. I don't feel like there's really any point to committing to it yet until they're invested and it's moved along further in the process. If they push you to say something, then I would either say the target salary I have is this, or my total compensation number is this, and you add everything in together, like the benefits and everything that you want together. So you want to keep it general and vague, but if they're like, I want a ballpark, we need a ballpark before we move on, then give them a number. Because if I often say, like, it's like, oh, whoever gives the number first loses. I've heard that before. It's like, well, you could be playing chicken, and then you just want to be certain with who you are and what you want and what you're asking for. And if you are connected with your value, like I was talking to Laura about, then you will get that. You will get that amount. You will get a company who's like, okay, we want to work with you. We want to make it work. We can do this, this, and this. Like, I've seen it a bazillion times. So it's really about you being connected with your value and being certain on what you want. Because if you're wishy-washy, then they're going to think that they can get you for way less. And I mean, unless they really can, because you're not connected to your value, you don't want to be portraying that. I hope that answers that question.
And one more question from Nolan, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, it's not a question, it's just an information. I have a friend who's a lawyer, and she told me 2 weeks ago that there is a new law that California passed. So if you're in California, it might be relevant to you. I'm not sure when it's going to go in effect, but apparently it would be mandatory for company, I don't know if it's like more than 15 employees or something like that, to publish the range for each position. So for that kind of position you're interviewing for, the range is from this to that. And the companies by law will have to disclose that, as it is currently done in one of the other states in the US, but I don't remember which one.
Yeah, more things are changing that way. And also there's laws coming into effect saying that you cannot ask somebody their past salary from their past job, which I love. I don't think people should ask that, because I don't think it's relevant to your future job at all. So thanks for that contribution. Yeah, that's really valuable.
New York has the same law already on the books.
Yeah, I think those are great laws. They're really going to protect the candidates and make sure they don't divulge information they don't need to.
Okay, and someone asked a question about what does recalibrated the role mean?
I think that's open to interpretation. I think it might be a fluffy way of saying they restructured or something.
Well, they're recalibrating, or they're trying to see what level, and they, change the level. That's what I would say recalibrated means.
I would ask them what they mean by it, to be clear, if you can.
And so, Natalie, this was great. Okay, you're going to send out the model to people, right?
I am, yes.
Us to send to people.
Yes.
And there was a really key statement that Renee made earlier about having the interviewer see the real you. And that I think is just hands down the greatest takeaway. If all of those questions, if you can go through the model that Natalie developed and really make sure that you're in your right mindset and energetic, space, that you are showing up as your authentic self, because that's where they fall in love with you as a client, as a candidate.
Yeah. And that's where you get to have the most fun, when you're being you.
Natalie, and that's really, I think, the greatest takeaway is it's about being you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're not being you and they hire you, it doesn't work anyway. I did that once too. I said what they wanted and they hired me, and then I was like, oh, I have to quit.
Yeah. Well, Natalie, we thank you for being you, and you're very authentic. Thank you so much for showing up and being with us and sharing your pearls of wisdom and taking us through the model. So what we'll do is send it out to everyone once you send it to us. And if you have any slides that that you didn't show that you wanted.
Yeah, I'm gonna put together, just based on what we did, I'm gonna put some little notes together. So it'll take me a little bit, but I will send you a quality document that everyone can take and have everything referenced that we talked about here today.
Wonderful. And we'll send out your contact information, and please connect with Natalie on LinkedIn. I love her LinkedIn profile. It makes me smile every time I read it.
It's so much fun over there. And as to Renee's point, I do post content, and I will answer that question. And so connect with me on LinkedIn and follow my stuff, because I'll provide information about how to use LinkedIn more effectively for your job search as well. And I mean, Laura had asked, Laura, you'd asked about that. I'm going to answer that.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.